Okay, so I guess I'll just start. This is the name of my talk. I'm going to talk about the dream of style guide-driven development. My name is Sarah, and these are our amazing sponsors that basically paid for us to be here and enjoy this beautiful town. So this was supposed to start with something like story time. So in this story time, I'm going to explain how I fell in love with style guides and style guide-driven development. I used to work in this company that had a lot of legacy CSS. But when I mean a lot, it was like the moment you wrote CSS, the next day it was legacy. It was actually legacy less, which you would think it would make it better because of variables and nesting, but it actually didn't. All it did was turn like this into this, which was not better. I think it was just horrible. And we also had a lot of problems with specificity. We had all the problems were basically specificity, because a lot of people didn't understand specificity or like CSS. There were two people in my project that actually liked CSS, which was a problem. To get the full context, you need to understand how specificity works. So one element is worth 1 point. It's actually worth 0.2 something, but let's just keep it simple, because I failed math, and you don't want to try to make me do additions at this hour. So a class is worth 10 points, an ID is worth 100, and an inline style is worth 1,000. This is why people tell you never to use IDs, because you need 10 classes and 256 elements to override an ID, which if you have those amount of elements in an HTML page, you're probably using Bootstrap. And I think the main issue with that is that important overrides all of this. It scraps all over your code and just says, no, I'm the boss here. Okay, cool. Okay, so if important overrides all of this, how do you override this? This is a huge problem that we had. There was base.ls files that had importance in it. This super generic class that shouldn't have anything really specific, or it shouldn't have importance, had 2 importance in it. And so to override this, how do you do this? I mean, how do you do this without inline styles? Because every time you use inline styles, a little kitten like this dies, and we don't want kittens to die. At least I don't want kittens to die. I don't know about you guys, but I have some feelings. 10% of me is still feelings. I'm not completely dead inside. And so how do you override this? Well, you gotta go 360 on the specificity wheel and override it with a tag. You guys know how many times I fucking did this. It's sad how many times I have done this in that company. I've done this so many times, because the moment you took an important off, you were like, why is this here? You took it, it broke everything. There was a reason that important was there. You just didn't know what it was, and you really didn't want to find out. And we had a lot of these problems. We had really big inconsistencies in our CSS where buttons were broken in one page. It was the same button being used on all of the pages, but in one page it was broken because it had importance in it, and you couldn't take the importance out, so you just wrote weird stuff like this. And this is what drove me to write this plugin. You guys don't understand Portuguese, but I think the Spanish people in here kind of understand this. So basically, if you write a curse word, it changes that to important. And I put this in my... Thank you, thank you. This is full-blown 20 minutes work, guys. Thank you so much. And I put this in my company's post-CSS thing, and now they had to write curse words, and they felt bad. And I won. I kind of won, and then we started using CSS modules, and eventually this was not needed anymore, which was cool. So I made this out of hate, and now I don't need it anymore. And yeah, that's how I started to fall in love with style guide-driven development, because when we started doing a React version of the Angular 1, yeah, okay, I forgot to mention that was Angular 1, which makes it a lot better, I guess. So there was importance and timeouts all over the code. We moved to React, and then the first thing that I did was guys, we're going to build a style guide. Why? Because I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm sad now. And we built a style guide, and all of the problems were gone, magically gone. The buttons worked in every page. What? The same button with the same CSS worked in every page. I was like, this is amazing. Okay, so this is the story of how I actually got to like style guide-driven development, how I made a useless plugin. And I'm going to start the talk, the actual talk right now. So my name is Sarah. I'm a full-stack developer. By full-stack, I mean Node. I am Nikita FTW on Twitter. I like football. I really like horror movies, and I love that thing that is on YouTube. So if you know what that is, yes, that is amazing. I work for YLD, London and Lisbon-based company. I am from Portugal. The Spanish people here know what I'm talking about. But if you don't know us, we're the people that won the Euro Cup last year, and nobody and you guys be wondering, but how did you win? We don't know either. We have no idea how that happened. Like, I seriously watched the finale like at my home because I always assumed that we were gonna lose, and then I had to like get the car and go party because. But this is true. Like, do you ever look at something and wonder how he got there? I don't know. None of us do. I think the players, no, they don't. So, style guide-driven development. Let's actually get started and stop with the jokes, maybe. Okay, so in this talk, I am gonna go over what is style guide-driven development, how you can implement this, and how you can integrate it with your team's workflow, and why you should use it. So 3 bullet points, pretty not so specific bullet points. Okay, so let's start with what is style guide-driven development. So style guide-driven development is basically a change in perspective. So you're used to getting sketch file. I was gonna say PSD, but this is 2017. So you're getting a sketch file and starting to hack away in your JSXs and your Webpacks and all the cool kid stuff that you guys now do. And don't really have we don't really have the mentality of a designer, except people who are designers. We don't really have that mentality. We don't have the perspective of like looking at something and trying to break it into small pieces, because most of the times it's not useful. Most of the times we just think, okay, so we just got to do this page and it'll be fine. Three years later, you're gonna end up like me, making stupid ass plugins. So you don't want to do that. And so imagine that you got something like this page, which loaded pretty fast. I'm proud of this internet. So the first thing that you do, like I said, is probably just start hacking away in JSX and build an awesome page. And just create this, make this beautiful, and make this work. But the thing is, okay, this is you guys hacking away in your JSX. This is gonna create custom CSS eventually, because if someone creates another page that you have to do, you're gonna have to write custom CSS. And custom CSS is the death of a developer. So this is basically like Autumn stock, but way like darker. I believe that custom CSS is the death of a developer. So is Opera Mini, but that's like a talk for another day. If anyone has ever worked with Opera Mini, that's kind of like, what? They support flex, but not border rate. It's just random. It's just completely random. You never get Opera Mini in anything. And what will happen is that you're going to get one page, and it's going to look great. And then you're going to get another page and get a whole bunch of pages, and you're going to end up making really a lot of custom CSS for really small things, because it's way faster to just write custom CSS than to go back and start a style guide. And let's be honest, project managers don't really like it when you're like, yeah, guys, can I stop and make a style guide? What are you talking about? That's not actual like work, you know. And this is why you pretty much need to start it from the beginning. Otherwise, they're just gonna tell you to no. And you don't want to custom CSS. You want to have a button that accepts all the props that you needed to accept. And when you need to change something, you're gonna change it in that button and not in the whole code that you have, which by the end of like a month will be just unbearable, and you will not know where all the CSS is. So this is like my approach to how I would view that page. So the idea is I would get all the spaces, I would get all the typography, get all the buttons and icons and all that stuff, and put it in a separate sketch file or Figma file or Photoshop. I don't know. Do people still use Photoshop? And just get all of that and get a style guide from that, because those are the things that are going to be used in that page. Eventually, there are going to be way more buttons, but we can incorporate those buttons into the style guide by just adapting props, because React is amazing and it has props, and you can adapt your CSS based on the props, which is amazing. We don't actually need to write a lot of custom CSS in our actual web app. The idea is that you write all CSS at once, so you never have to write CSS again. Doesn't that sound amazing? Like making a web page with like 0 CSS and making it look pretty. That sounds like the dream. That's my point. So, the idea is that we should all have like a very little own bootstrap page. So our very little own style guide where everything that we have in that app is focused in there, which makes it a lot easier to maintain. It also makes it a lot easier to test. And there's something that you have that is always up to date, which is amazing. So in a recap of this, I'm just going to go with like style guide driven development is a mentality. It's not a skill. Every single person in here has the skill to create a style guide and have the style guide driven development mentality. I'm not here to teach you a craft. I'm just here to make you like think about something and be like, whoa, she's right. Maybe not, but maybe she is. So just get like when you walk out of that door, actually no, because there's going to be another talk after me, but you got my point. When you walk over that magical door, you're thinking about this and being like, maybe we should implement this. Maybe this is a good idea. Like, don't use my plugin, implement style guide driven development. That's my idea. The idea is also to divide your layouts into building blocks. So everything in your layout should be a block. That's the idea of components as well. You shouldn't have to create a whole bunch of custom CSS for one block in particular. You should have building blocks that will create automatically your application. Have something like React Spaceman, have something, all of the components, and have something for typography, have something for everything, so that you can just drag and drop, basically, and everything will work. And that is an amazing feeling when you just drag and drop components from a UI library and it works. Also, think of your website from a designer standpoint. Designers often create style guides before they start designing. And we don't tend to do that because we like them codes and stuff. But you should think of your web app or your application from a designer standpoint. Because most of the times, they actually know what they're doing. They're really smart people. And they tend to create these style guides, not just for themselves, but for us as well, to aid us with creating everything and making everything pixel perfect, which is really hard, guys. So let's go over how. So how can you actually like make this a thing? And how can you integrate this with your developer team and designer team and stuff like that? So I'm going to go over two tools. I am going to go over React Styleguide, and I'm going to go a little bit over Storybook, because I realized that you guys had like a Storybook injection yesterday. So I do have React Styleguide stickers if you want. I'm going to buy everyone with stickers. So let's go over React Styleguide. So like the website says, it's an isolated React component development environment with a living style guide. What does this mean? It means you can create your components isolated from the world, which is amazing. So basically, you get your component and you create it completely isolated, which means that you can test it, you can do CSS for it, and it works in there. So if it works in there and it doesn't work somewhere else, it's not the component's fault. It's your app's fault. It's broken, and I'm sorry. You can test extensively with this. You can create like a small little piece of your application that is completely hidden from the outside world. It still lives in his mom's basement and all. So I created this React Style Guide as boilerplate, which is not a lot, but it served the purpose that I wanted to. So I really wanted you guys to like create style guides, so I made a boilerplate. That was pretty much it. Okay, so all you gotta do is git clone, cd into it, delete my git stuff, or not. If you want to make pull requests, don't delete it. Just yarn it, or npm install it, and go yarn start. And you'll get something like this, which I have open right here. So you get something like this, where you get like the button. All of these examples were stolen from the React Style Guide thing, GitHub. So one really cool thing that you have in here that I really, really appreciate is the props and methods. So you have the prop name, you have the type, which supports float, TypeScript, or just normal prop types. You also have if it's required or not, and you have a description. This description is read from the comments. It uses something like a comment system, and it reads the description that you put on top of the prop type, or that you put on top of the float description. And it gives you a complete description, in this case not really complete, but it gives you a description of what that thing is actually supposed to do, which is amazing, because you get a new developer and you just go to the style guide, and it explains everything. Also, because you can like, edit the code right here. Wait, there we go. Sorry, the internet is kind of slow. So, not like this, but you can edit the code, and it works. It changes the code right here, and people can actually play with it, and somebody who doesn't ever work in your team, doesn't know your style guide, can change this in really great ways. You can also have the explanation of why this is a thing, why am I doing this, You can have variants of your code, so size large. I can remove this, and this will be smaller. There we go. You can use any type of markdown, like it says. And there's also one thing that are really cool, that you can add custom props, and you can disable an editor, which you may think this is a really small thing, but so I have these components that are just typography. I don't really want an editor because it creates a lot of space between the types. It creates a lot of space. And one thing that is really cool is that you can just disable the editor. You don't want people to mess around with your code? Don't let them mess around with your code. And you can also just write JavaScript. So this is like the boilerplate that I created with Create React App to help you get started with this. You also have a counter button, placeholders, stuff like that. This was all just stolen from Artem's work. So, and this is a really nice place for you to get started by creating your own style guide and just hack away. But the cool thing about learning style guides is not like, okay, you have a boilerplate, but how does this work? Well, wait, guys, just chill. So this is the folder structure of the style guide the boilerplate that I have. So you have an app that has source and components. It has a lot more components, but I just added one. So there's the index.js, which mainly just imports the button. If you have multiple files, you can basically just import all of the files into that one and export them, which is easier than import from button/random button.js. So you can just import random button from button. And it has button.js, which actually has the code for the button, button.css, and the readme.md. You may ask, why is there a readme? Because Styleguide just reads your readme, actually, not like humans. He reads it. It's like a good person. It reads the readme that is written in Markdown and transpiles it into beautiful code. So you have the folder for Styleguide, which is the build. You can name it whatever you want. You have package.json. Never forget to lint. Never forget to lint. And you have a styleguide.config.js. This is what I'm going to go over in a bit. So this is the configuration that you need to get Styleguide up and running. So this is the styleguide.config.js. So the first thing is you export everything. And you need to tell it where your components are. So this basically says that in source components, get everything. Just don't care. And this tells it that if you don't have a default example, it's going to show you like a thing that says you forgot a default example. This will not show in production. This is basically a good reminder for you guys to like remind yourselves, oh shit, I forgot about this one. If you don't want this, you can turn this to false, but this will never show in production. This is just a good warning for you guys in development to remind yourselves to actually create. So you have your title, a webpack config that has rules for JS/JSX, just gets the Babel loader, and some really standard CSS rules that this is on the boilerplate, so you can just delete it and use components, which is cool. But I created it with like random CSS. This is pretty much all you need. Like if you want fonts and everything, you gotta use them in here. There are a lot more options in React Styleguidist. Then pretty much you can change like pretty much everything. So this is the button. So the first thing that you do is import all the things, import prop types, import React, and import the CSS. And you create your button. You render your button. And this is where I think it gets really cool. So you have the button prop types, and as you can see, there are comments above each prop type. These comments get picked up by React Styleguidist and create those amazing props and methods tab that you just saw. And so if it's required, you can see here that it's going to tell you that it's a string. It's going to tell you that it's required. Also, if it's one off, it's going to tell you all the options that you have for that particular prop type. Also, the default props will show. And the default props will show on the other tab, like saying this is the default value for this. So if you don't want this, change it, please. This is not OK. And in the readme.md, you have rendered the default. It's just code from Markdown, JSX, and just put your button in there. It automatically imports everything that is in the file, so the file that is in that folder. Wait, shit, sorry. You can also pass props, and it works completely fine. Like I said, you can disable the editor, so JSX just basically says no editor, and you have no editor. And if you put static, it basically just renders the code. So if you want to tell people this is how to use it, you can just render it static and tell people, okay, you guys, you should build it like this. This is great if your company is growing and you're getting a lot of new youngsters. I don't know, I'm 25. I'm speaking like I'm 40. I don't know why. I think this sailor life is just killing me, I guess. So amazing things about Styleguide. It can be, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't say that. It can be used with Preact. I love Preact. I also have Preact stickers. That's it. That's all the stickers that I have. It can be used with Preact, and it's really easy. You just resolve React and React DOM to Preact Compact. It works. Amazing. I love Preact. Everything just works. The design is completely customizable. So you can change the styles. And but by the styles, I mean you can change like the actual styles, and it also has a theme. It works in JSS, so you can pass new variables in the Webpack config to change the spacing, to change the colors, change the fonts, pretty much change every background and everything. And you can also change the layout. And if you're really feeling like really fancy, you can even write custom components to render it instead of the actual Styleguide components. One thing that is really cool is that it also has a Node API. So if you want to build like something for regression tests, you can just start Styleguide and then start your regression test, and it works amazing. One thing that I find really, really cool is that it automatically has a live editor, which allows you to test all your stuff. Awesome. And component definition is in Markdown. We are all pretty used to Markdown because of GitHub. So this is a really cool thing that I enjoy. I enjoy really a lot. So Storybook. I know you had a full stuff of Storybook yesterday, but I created a Storybook boilerplate because I try not to be like, try to pick sides. So, pretty much the same thing. You cd into Storybook boilerplate, delete the git. If you want to help out with this boilerplate and make it cooler, just don't delete the git. Yarn start, and bow. You got yourself a boilerplate. So this is the boilerplate that you get. So this has only one add-on, which is the action logger, as you can see. It doesn't have any other add-ons. And you can also like check everything that your component does. Click it, counter button. It has this really nifty thing that I really like. I can never memorize the shortcuts, but I think it's really cool that it actually has some shortcuts. And this is like everything that you get as soon as you just yarn start your boilerplate. You get something like this that you can just play around and change, add a lot of add-ons, create all your stuff, make it awesome. So this is the folder structure of Storybook. So you have a .storybook folder with a config inside. Source components button, it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that it doesn't have a README, because Storybook will not get stuff from your README. And you have stories, and inside of it, you have button.js. You have all of the others, but I only put button. So the build goes in the out folder by default. You can change this to go in the Styleguide folder, go in fish sticks folder. Just, it's your life, guys. And then it's packet.json, Babel, and yes, lint. Please do all the linting. So this is the button. It's exactly the same button. The code of the button has not been changed in a single way. So these are the stories.button. So the first thing you got to do is import all the things. And by all the things, I mean import React, import stories of, which you can think a little bit of like test in jest. Like it's the block that is going to have all your stories in. So, and you got to import action. The action is the add-on that allows you for that action logger that I just showed you. Sorry, there we go. So if I click here, this is the action logger. And you got to import the button, obviously. So stories of button, this means that this is just the name that is going to show up. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it train. You can call it fish sticks. You can call it anything you guys want. Just don't put any curse words in there. And you just attach that to the module, and then you add variants of your component. So you add it with names as well. So this kind of reminds me of the way we write tests in Jest now. So this is basically like the test, and then you have each statement. And so you have this, and this is how you call the action logger. By just say action clicked, it's basically like a console that you have inside your thing. So you had all types of variants to your component, and then you have the config. So in the config, you just import configure from storybook/React, which you will understand why it's storybook/React in a while. And then you require all of the stories that you created. So nothing is auto magic. I mean, a lot of things are auto magic. But the fact that the stories appear in your storybook, it's not auto magic. You need to add them in order for them to appear. So you need to manually go there and add them, which may be good for you if you want to keep this in the same repo. as your actual project, or it may be a handful. It depends on really what you want to do. So both of these are good. It just depends on what you want to achieve. So one really good thing, I know that I'm in a React conference, but nobody can hate on Vue. It's like the little kid of web development. We love Vue. So it can be used with Vue, which is, I think it's a really good thing that they're trying to like spread out the thing, and they are trying to make it work with Angular and other stuff. But if you move away from React to Vue, or usually the opposite, it's great that you have the same thing to work with, the same tool to work with. Andre, stop laughing. It has a lot of add-ons. So this actually has a link. I will share all the slides. It has a lot of add-ons. It has, just off the top of my head, it has one for readmes. It has one for props, like changing the props. So basically, it's an add-on that kind of mimics what React Styleguide already does in like changing in the code editor. It has one for tests, which Styleguide also has one called Snapguide that works and makes tests automatically. It has one for GraphQL. It has like a lot of add-ons that were either created by the community or created by Storybook itself. Not the machine, but actual people behind Storybook. And it has an integrated console. Like, I think this is, I can see this as a good thing, and I can also see this as a bad thing, but I'm thinking of this in a positive way. Like, you can just action things to the logger, and you can see all your stuff without having to actually open the console. If there's a bug, you still have to open the console, but. And component definition is in plain JSX. So as long it's not a configuration file, I still have bad dreams about grunt. So it's still not a configuration file, I'm okay with it. Just give me whatever I want, just give me whatever you want. Just don't give me configuration files, and I'm okay with it. So JSX, Markdown, I'm okay with it. Okay, so now you're probably saying like, okay, Sarah, this is cool. How am I gonna integrate this with my team? Okay, so let's assume you're a developer. Are you? Are you a developer? So by being a developer, I'm going to give you like 3 options that I think fit really well with working with your team. So one of them is just use a folder in your repo. That's like the old 2007 methodology of doing stuff. Just put it in a folder, hide it away from everyone, and just start it. You could do this. This is not like the optimal way, but it's the fastest way to get something up and running, to show your product manager or to show someone and be like, isn't this cool? Yeah, can I please make it into an NPM module? Yeah. So create an NPM package with versioning and keep updating that package. Like, a really cool thing about this is that if you have an NPM package, I'm assuming that you're not using like private NPM, you make this open source. And also, you really learn a lot about versioning, guys. Seriously. You learn about what the point of versioning is. If you didn't know, like, it's hard sometimes. So you create an NPM package, you keep updating that package. This has a problem. So if you're starting out your style guide, you're going to be changing that pretty much every day, several times a day. You're going to break that like every 3 days. And by having an NPM package, you have to keep like doing yarn update of every single time that you make a change. So my preference in this is, like, the way that I'm using it now is use Lerna and create a mono repo with your style guide. So basically, it's still an NPM package, but it's NPM linked to all of your packages inside that Lerna repo, and it updates automatically. And every time you make a breaking change, all you really need to do is just NPM publish it with the breaking change. Your Lerna will be like, nope, we don't want this anymore, and it's going to go get it from the NPM registry or Yarn registry. This is the way that I've been using it lately, since we've been like hacking away in it and breaking stuff. As soon as it's stable, I would say just create your own repo, mainly if you're making it open source. Create your own repo, create your own NPM package, and just throw it into the world, because you're not going to be making a whole lot of changes like after it's stable. But for when you're starting, I think this is like the best option. I have had 0 problems with it. So designers. If you're a designer or are friends with designers, this is how you can get them to like help this transition. Because sometimes the problem is not just us, it's also designers. If you work with designers that live really far away and you have like almost 0 contact with them, which I have done, and it's terrible, you don't really know like what is the latest version. Like, every single version says final and has stuff in front of it. And it's not cool, guys, it's not cool. So there's this option, well, just put all your stuff in Dropbox and just update it. Isn't that like 2007? Yeah. But it kind of works, like, for a while, until Dropbox is full of your final stuff. use Sketch with Cactus. Cactus is basically like Git for Sketch, which is, I think, an amazing invention. Since a lot of the front end started working with Sketch because it's fun, you can use Cactus with Sketch, and that will create versioning, which actual versioning with numbers and not just final one, like actual versions that we as developers understand. It also has diffing between Sketch files. It does a whole bunch of stuff that I think if you guys work with designers and they use Sketch, you should totally give this a try. I think it's really good. And it really helps in the communication between designers and developers that sometimes it's not easy. Mainly when they try to design custom dropdowns, custom selects with custom options, and you want to punch them. Use Figma. Figma, I am not sponsored by Figma. I am not. So Figma is an online tool that it's free. If you use it on your own, it's completely free. I've been using it. And it's online, so that means it works on Linux, Mac, and Linux, Mac, Windows, yeah. And Windows. I swear to God, that was not on purpose. I totally forgot that Windows existed. It also works on your phone, so if you're designing a mobile thing, it works on your phone. And it also has this awesome feature. So real-time collaboration, I can see what the other designer is doing. It has versioning history. Yes, you can see the latest version. It's browser-based, and it also has a desktop app. And it has team libraries, which are basically the style guides for the designers, which if they update, you can see that they've been updated because the version has changed. That is really cool. It has integrations with Slack. The Slack integration just tells you when there are comments. There are integrations with Framer. Framer is basically to create prototypes. For designers, I knew a designer that worked with it a lot. He learned CoffeeScript, basically, because that is written in CoffeeScript. You have comments, emails, notifications, and you also have presentation mode, which basically allows you to do things and make it move and stuff, make it real cool stuff. Team component library. So this is what we're using. I think it's really good, mainly because it's online. It works for everyone. It's fast. And you don't have to install anything. You can get all the versioning. It's really sweet. It's like working with Git, but for designers. And as myself, I really like designers, and this has really helped me to talk to them and just getting into we could understand each other. So why should you use style guide driven development? Hopefully I have convinced you with my incredible charm, but if I haven't, I'm going to give you some more reasons. So you get way more maintainable styles. Since you only have styles in one place, it becomes incredibly more maintainable. It becomes kind of easy to do CSS, and CSS is hard, guys. CSS is not easy at all. You have less specific bugs. Let me rephrase this in a way. So you remember when you have that bug when it's a full moon and there's a werewolf in your town, this button is not the appropriate color? That doesn't happen anymore. Why? Because it's all the same color. It's amazing. You have one source of truth. This is really important when somebody comes to you and says, this is supposed to look like this. You can just slap the style guide in their face. Don't actually slap it. I mean, if you're friends with it, just slap it. Whatever you want. You can just slap the style guide and it says, it's like this in here, so it's okay, and just walk away. I have done this, and people were like, yeah, she's right. That was amazing. The PMs actually heard me. One source of truth is really important in everything, in design and in development. You need to have one place where you can find something and say, this is the correct way to do it. Don't annoy me with this, because this is the correct way. This is how it's done here. This is really important, because if you don't have one source of truth, people can complain all the time, and you can't fight them. And they can't fight you. And if they're praying for yourself, they're eventually going to win. It's so much better for unit testing because you're testing your components separate from the rest of the application. So you can do extensive testing in it. You can test for pretty much anything, and you can make sure that it works on its own, so that if it doesn't work somewhere else, well, it's not the component's fault, your app is just probably broken. You can test everything, and it's so much better, because that's the idea of unit testing. Unit testing wasn't made to test a whole a whole component that is the home component that has everything. Unit testing was meant to test functions. As in React, since we don't have that idea of so much as functions, it was meant to test small components. This is a perfect example of great unit testing, is when you create a style guide and just test your small components separately. It's amazing. It's way better for testing. You actually like testing, because there are not so many stuff like you need to import Redux for this to work in your test. Oh, come on. UI development, in my opinion, is just generally better. It's just like a drag and drop situation. You wanna make things pixel perfect so that you don't have the work later. You wanna create your UI toolkit in such a way that you know that you're doing this also for yourself, because you know that if you create it really, really well written and really well composed, you're gonna have to answer way less questions than you did a couple of months ago. Like, there's gonna be no more people coming to you, oh, where do I get the styles from this button? You just send them the link, it's okay. They're gonna figure it out. They can read English, or Spanish, or Portuguese, whatever. They can read. I assume that people who program can read. I'm not sure. And I think it's like generally a better approach to doing UI. Since the idea of React has always been to divide everything into components, this is like the extreme version of React, which, in my opinion, is just like nicer. It's cuter. It has little puppies and everything. So that's it for my talk. And you can find the slides and the links in the first link, and just the slides in the, in this link. Not this is not needed. I will share this GitHub link on Slack, don't worry about it. And on Twitter. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, there's a question there. Oh, sorry, man. It's not on purpose. Oh, you won!
Okay, so we just started with our own style guide, and we started with React Storybook. So is there any killer feature in style guides that we should consider switching to this? Or like what would you choose from the beginning?
I usually work with style guides, and I hope I do not get punched for saying this, because I think this is like a competition now. But this is not a competition. Like, I prefer style guides because it doesn't rely so much on add-ons. I don't really I like modularity, but I like something that when you start it, it has like a solid base that you can do. So that was the main idea why I chose style guides. Since I really like changing stuff and making CSS and making things look way nicer. Not nicer, but like the way that I like them. It may not be nicer, actually. I chose also style guides because it allows you to change pretty much everything in the styles, which I thought was pretty cool. So I could make it look like the styles that the style guide had, which I think is a really cool addition, that you can change everything. You can change the layout. You can change everything. But it really depends on the type of project that you have. I think these are two great tools. I went one way and other people went another way. But these are two great tools, and I think in my opinion, I prefer style guides, but it's my opinion. So what is the type of project that you're working in? Like, what are the specifications that you need for a style guide there?
Well, a bunch of basic components, like primitives, like buttons, input.
Okay, yeah, style guides works great for you. Also, Storybook will work great for you. I think it's a matter of just download both boilerplates, hack around in it, and see what fits better with your team. They'll just show them both, and they both have links in GitHub. So just show them both and be like, guys, you can change these styles, you can do whatever you want. Which one do you guys want to use?
As I see it, like those two things do basically the same thing in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. There are things that Style Guides does by default that you need add-ons for, but it's still pretty much, you can get it to work on React Storybook. It's just a different approach of doing stuff. Doesn't mean that one is better than the other.
Next one.
I've been using Storybook a while now, and I found it that it needs a lot of boilerplate, and you have to maintain your code base and the code base for Storybooks. You actually convinced me to give Style Guides a try.
Yeah, you're gonna get a sticker.
On
nice.
Monday, yeah. But
yes.
I want to know if the amount of boilerplate is similar, or it can be more or less well. I like the whole README thing in the same folder as the components, but I need more like an automation kind of tool, and I don't know if this kind of works. Okay, so I think the main difference in terms of boilerplating is Storybook makes you be really specific about the components that you want to show, which is something that doesn't happen in Style Guide. So you just give it a folder and be like, use all of this, I don't care, do whatever you want. Which, if you're maintaining a Style Guide, it may be better for you if it's in another package because there's not so much boilerplate that you need to do.
since it doesn't rely so much on add-ons and everything is pretty much already in the package, I would say that it removes a lot of the boilerplate that you have to do to actually maintain it, because you basically just have to create your buttons and create your inputs, and then just create a README file. As you can see, the README file, I think we're all pretty much used to the Markdown files by now. So it's a really simple README file that will just automatically show your component. So I think in terms of boilerplates, I think this one may be a faster way to get up and running. That answers your question? Yes? Cool. Does anybody have any other questions? Nope. Oh, sorry.
So basically, Styleguide boilerplate. You show that you can lively change button CSS and styles.
Yeah.
So is it like you can save that in your boilerplate? So
No. This is more for like playing around. Yeah, as a preview.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a preview. So if you like the way it sounds, like size equals large, I think. So if you like it, you can just copy it and paste it in your Markdown and just use it like this. But this is more of a preview for you to see if it breaks and if the component. This is also really good if you have quality assurance engineers in your team, for them to just test all your components and basically break them, because they will break them. And you can fix it automatically. You can just see what they broke. They can just send you the code, and you can see what is wrong with that code, create a test for it, make it break, and then fix the test. And it's way easier than to fix it in an entire web page, basically.
Okay, cool. And also, nice touch, Pac-Man eating next slide bullet.
Yeah, I like, yeah. That was like the default. I just didn't change it because it was cool.
One more question, anyone? Back there? Nope?
No? Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
You need this? Okay, cool. No problem. Oh, shit.